Welcome to the Pardes channel. Today we explain Prophet Samuel, chapter 12, in a clear and simple way, step by step. So let's just dive right into this explainer of 1 Samuel chapter 12. We're going to focus purely on the simple, literal text, the peshat of this incredibly pivotal historical address. Just to give you a very brief bit of context on where we are in the story, we are at a massive transition point in the history of Israel. The era of the judges is ending, and the era of kings is officially beginning. Saul has just been confirmed as the first king of Israel right after a major military victory, and the prophet Samuel is stepping up to give his farewell address as the sole political and military leader.
Here's our roadmap for today. We will walk through this chapter strictly in order. First, Samuel defends his integrity. Second, a history of rebellion. Third, the king you chose. Fourth, the sign of thunder. Fifth, grace and moving forward. And finally, some key lessons and a recap. All right, let's get into the text.
Section 1. Samuel defends his integrity. This covers 1 Samuel 12, verses 1 through 5.
Before Samuel can deliver any kind of critique to the nation of Israel, he's got to prove that his own hands are completely clean. So we anchor ourselves right at the very start of chapter 12. In verses 1 and 2, Samuel is standing there before the Israelites and their newly appointed king, Saul. He tells them, "Look, I have listened to everything you said to me and have set a king over you. Now you have a king as your leader. As for me, I'm old and gray, and my sons are here with you. I've been your leader from my youth until this very day." Samuel is establishing the physical reality of the moment here. He gave them exactly what they asked for, and now he is officially stepping back from his role as their primary day-to-day leader.
What happens next in verse 3 is honestly fascinating. Samuel throws down this incredibly bold public challenge. He demands that if he has wronged absolutely anyone in his entire lifetime of leadership, they need to step up and testify right now, right before the Lord and before the newly anointed king. He explicitly asks, has he ever stolen livestock? Has he cheated anyone, oppressed anyone, or taken a bribe to turn a blind eye to justice? He is literally putting his entire lifelong reputation on trial in front of the whole nation.
And in verses 4 and 5, the people just unanimously clear his name. They basically say, "No, you haven't cheated or oppressed us. You haven't taken anything from anyone's hand." Samuel then seals this testimony by declaring, "The Lord is witness against you, and also his anointing is witness this day, that you have not found anything in my hand." The people fully agree, which firmly establishes that Samuel has never, not once, abused his power.
So you gotta ask yourself, why does Samuel start his big farewell speech this way? Well, it brilliantly illustrates the whole concept of moral authority. By securing his own undeniable innocence first, Samuel earns the undeniable right to point out their guilt. He isn't criticizing them from some place of hypocrisy. He led with absolute honesty, and that gives his upcoming words massive, undeniable weight.
Moving on to Section 2, a history of rebellion. This covers 1 Samuel 12, verses 6 through 11.
With his integrity completely affirmed, Samuel pivots the narrative. He confronts Israel with a rapid-fire tour of their own really rocky history with God. He tells them to just stand still, because he is going to lay out the evidence of all the righteous acts the Lord has performed for them. In verses 8 through 11, he lays out this distinct historical cycle. Phase 1, after Jacob went to Egypt, the people cried out, and God sent Moses and Aaron to rescue them and bring them to this land. Phase 2, the people forgot the Lord, so he sold them into the hands of foreign commanders, guys like Sisera, the Philistines, and the king of Moab. Phase 3, the people cried out again, in total distress, admitting they had sinned and served foreign idols. And in response, God sent deliverers, judges like Jerubbaal, Barak, Jephthah, and Samuel himself, to rescue them so they could actually live securely.
The really crucial takeaway here is this tragic, repetitive cycle. It's this constant pattern of forgetting God, suffering the direct, harsh consequences of that abandonment, crying out in total desperation, and then experiencing God's totally unmerited rescue. God consistently saved them whenever they repented and put away local idols like the Baals and the Ashtoreths. The point is, God was always faithful, even when the people were completely unfaithful.
Section 3, the king you chose. This brings us to 1 Samuel 12, verses 12 through 15. Now we hit the current crisis, which is addressed right in verse 12. Samuel points out their ultimate rejection. Even with this long, proven history of divine rescue we just talked about, the Israelites totally panicked when they faced a new enemy. Verse 12 states that when they saw Nahash, the king of the Ammonites, moving against them, they immediately said to Samuel, "No, we want a king to rule over us." They demanded an earthly king for protection, completely tossing aside the fact that the Lord their God was already their true king. Out of pure fear, they traded eternal divine security for a visible earthly human solution.
Then in verse 13, Samuel says, "Now here is the king you have chosen, the one you asked for. See, the Lord has set a king over you." God actually grants their request. He allows them to have this earthly monarch, Saul. But Samuel isn't done. He's about to lay out a really strict, uncompromising condition moving forward, for both the people and their new king.
Verses 14 and 15 lay down the new constitutional terms of this kingdom, really. Samuel explains that simply having a human king doesn't change their fundamental relationship with God at all. If both the people and the king fear the Lord, serve him, and obey his commands, great, all will be well. But if they rebel against his commands, God's hand will be heavily against them, exactly as it was against their ancestors. A human king absolutely cannot save them from divine judgment.
Section 4. The Sign of Thunder. 1 Samuel 12, verses 16 through 19.
To really prove the absolute severity of their sin, the sin of rejecting God's direct rule and begging for a king, Samuel calls upon a terrifying act of nature. He tells them to stand still and watch this great thing the Lord is about to do. In verse 17, he explicitly notes that it is the wheat harvest. Now, to get why this matters, you have to know that in ancient Israel, the wheat harvest happens right in the middle of the dry season. Rain at this time is incredibly rare, almost unheard of, and worse than that, heavy rain could completely ruin the entire crop and cause mass starvation. So when Samuel says he's going to call upon the Lord to send thunder and rain right then and there, he is calling for a highly disruptive, seemingly impossible miracle just to show them how evil their request really was.
And verse 18 tells us it happens. Samuel called upon the Lord, and that exact same day the Lord sent thunder and rain. This massive divine mic drop absolutely terrifies the Israelites. They stand there in absolute awe and terror of both the Lord and Samuel. By verse 19, they just break down. They finally realize the sheer magnitude of their evil, and they beg Samuel, "Pray to the Lord your God for your servants so that we will not die. For we have added to all our other sins the evil of asking for a king." This literal physical storm perfectly mirrors the massive spiritual storm they brought upon themselves.
Section 5. Grace and Moving Forward. This is 1 Samuel 12, verses 20 through 25.
The narrative arc here is just beautiful, honestly, because it doesn't resolve with ultimate condemnation. Instead, it offers a really surprising message of reassurance. In verse 20, Samuel tells them, "Do not be afraid. You have done all this evil, yet do not turn away from the Lord, but serve the Lord with all your heart." He doesn't sugarcoat anything. Yes, they messed up, and they messed up severely. But the key takeaway is not to run away from God in shame or turn to these useless idols that can't deliver them anyway. Rather, they have to course correct right now. They need to commit to serving God wholeheartedly from this day forward.
Then, in verses 22 through 25, Samuel gives them these incredibly profound commitments. First, he reminds them that God has chosen them and absolutely won't abandon them for the sake of his great name. Second, Samuel promises, "Far be it from me that I should sin against the Lord by failing to pray for you." Even though they totally rejected him as a leader, he says he will never stop praying for them. And third, he promises he will continue teaching them the good and right way. He simply asks them to consider the great things God has done and to just serve him faithfully.
Section 6. Key Lessons and Recap. Let's look at the practical application.
So, let's distill all of this. What does this ancient chapter mean for us today, and how can we apply these practical life lessons to improve ourselves? First off, lead with absolute integrity. Just like Samuel, your moral authority comes from living an honest, uncorrupted life. Second, own up to your mistakes and your history. If you ignore the past, you're just going to repeat that cycle of failure. Third, and this is probably the most important one, you can always course correct. Failure is literally never final if you don't run away in shame, but instead return to the right path. And finally, do not rely on useless idols or quick earthly solutions just out of fear, forgetting the much higher principles of faith and truth.
Samuel actually closes the chapter in verse 25 with a pretty stark warning. "Yet if you persist in doing evil, both you and your king will be swept away." So I'll leave you with this final thought to ponder. Will you let fear drive you toward useless solutions, or will you choose the path of integrity and wholehearted service? Thank you for learning with us. If this helped you understand the chapter better, like, subscribe, and join us for the next chapter.